We're excited to get started, so welcome everybody. Today we are going to be talking about the death of the manual QBR in the age of AI and how quickly everything is changing. Obviously, the way that we deliver back to customers has also changed. And so exciting topic today. Quick intro for me. My name is Genevieve. I lead the strategic customer success team. I've been in CS for quite some time. So very familiar with that manual QBR process, excited to see it go. And I am going to pass it over to Nabil, who's going to be going through his perspective today. And so Nabil, over to you to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Jen. I'm really excited to be joining you all for this session. My name is Nabil. I'm the CEO of Rollstack. At Rollstack, we specialize in automating data-driven reporting. So we obviously have the chance to work with a large number of CS teams, and really excited to share with you some of the insights we're seeing in the space. Prior to Rollstack, I've been working also very closely with CS team, being the head of revenue operations at Deal, and prior to that, leading data analytics teams at companies like Groupon and Pinterest. So coming from the space, and also really excited again to meet you all.
Awesome. All right. Well, for everybody, we're going to present some slides and go through a lot of different topics today around the QBR. But just to get us going, a little interactivity, would love to kind of understand from those of us who are joining today, how long are you or your team spending on QBRs today? And what are you hoping that changes to? So if you want to throw that into the comments just to get us going, that would be great. But Nabil, let's dive in. I know you and I have talked a lot about how AI is not just changing the landscape of the QBR, but of CS itself. I mean, even in just the last, I would say for me, 6 to 8 months, conversations have changed, process has changed, the way that we're managing teams is looking to evolve, and there's just always something new. So I would love to kind of start there, the state of CS in 2026. I mean, we're a new frontier here. So would love your thoughts on your perspective on how this is changing and where you think we are focusing. And yeah, let's dive into it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, I think everyone realizes that the nature of the job is changing in 2026, and for many reasons. AI obviously plays a big part in that, but not just AI. The way we do CS has moved, and there is this big theme that we're constantly hearing from companies, from the boards, from CFOs, from CEOs, of how can we do more with less, right? Mm-hmm. That's the common theme that everyone is hammering, do more with less. Yep. And what that means for CS teams is more coverage. So you see typically CS team members managing larger books, and that trend is consistent whether you look at SMB, mid-market, or enterprise. Second key trend is headcounts are kept flat. So teams are somehow supposed to deliver more, but without additional incremental hiring. Mm-hmm. The third trend is owning revenue targets. And it would be a surprise to see a CS team in 2026, again, not owning at a minimum at least one revenue target, whether that's gross dollar retention, whether that's net dollar retention. And what is supposed to make all that happen, well, is the magic word AI. That is what everyone is expecting to drive those OpEx incremental gains and those operational efficiencies. Mm-hmm. Now, beyond the buzz, the levels at which teams are able to realize these operational efficiencies vary. You obviously see a lot of talk about AI, about agents, and all the buzzwords on LinkedIn. But it's really important to unravel all that and see where the true incremental value lies and how to unlock that.
Yeah. I am smiling at a couple of these because it resonates deeply with me. So I'm sure it does with many of the people on here as well. But yeah, this whole concept of value manager and what that means today. Let's dive into this because this is a very key conversation that I know I've been having with my leadership and even my teams.
Absolutely. And it's really at the core of the fundamental shift that is happening, where CS teams were previously considered as these trusted advisors to the users and to customers, in charge of helping them drive more adoption, better utilize the platform, do more customer education. And now more and more they're shifting into true value managers. You see even roles open in CS of value engineering or value management. And that shows in the stats. So as mentioned before, 94% of CS teams now carry a revenue target. More importantly, you have 40% of a SaaS revenue that is now happening in the post-sale, meaning that almost half of an account value will be derived by CS team, almost on par with new business, which is massive. Yeah. And then lastly, when it comes to pipeline generation, there is this new concept of CSQL. So we're talking also about this with Jen earlier, of these opportunities that are now sourced by the CS teams that AEs or account management teams can then go after, similar to a new business opportunity.
For sure. And, for anybody that's, joining us today, would love to kind of hear from anybody in the chat. If you want to throw a comment in, how are you navigating this today? How are your teams managing not just GDR targets, but NRR targets? And how are you thinking about prioritizing that? Because it's, as you said, more CS teams are being put into that revenue org and being tasked with owning targets, expansion, renewals, all of those different pieces. And so with that, as you said earlier, there's work that needs to be done in the reporting on that, how they're getting to that and how that drives value back to the customer. All of that now has to come together. So let's continue to dive into some of the other thoughts that we have around this. But if anybody wants to throw a comment in, please do.
Yeah, please do throw in some comments and also throw in some questions. We'll be carving out the last 5 minutes for that. At the same time, when looking at how a typical CSM weeks breaks down, it's clear that there is a huge, massive productivity gap, and there is ample headroom to make CSMs more efficient. In fact, CSMs typically spend almost 70% of their weekly time on admin tasks and only 30% on client facing, which is massive. And when asked about what they would like to start by automating, obviously no CSM mentions the client relationship, and almost all of them mention that admin work first. So we believe this is where all the AI and agents' attention should really be focused. And as the AI agents enter the CS stack in 2026, it's critical that they start by admin areas where CSMs are spending most of their time. And it just happens that QBRs naturally are one of the biggest time sucks for CSMs.
Yeah. And, I imagine a lot of people on this call are, the whole thing around productivity and client facing versus admin. It's a really interesting topic right now because, and you and I have talked about this, being able to automate means having good data to start with. A lot of CS teams are really evaluating all the different data points, the leading indicators, the lagging indicators, the health signals, all these different things that have historically been so manual. How are we automating more of that? But then also prep for calls, all of these different things. And it feels very much like we're in this test, learn, iterate landscape, which can be complex to navigate. So, it's definitely a very timely topic. And I'm sure a lot of people on this call smiling like me because it's a very timely thing that we're all struggling with. So let's continue to pull on this thread a little bit and figure out how are you seeing teams adopt these agents, or your perspective on what that means?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great point. And our perspective is CS teams need to secure some buy-in from data and analytics teams to help them and support them build these basic views that will find their way into client reporting and be presented to customers, because ultimately they're going to be helping drive more adoption. They're also going to be helping drive more upsells and renewals. So securing that that buy-in and that help from data analytics team is critical. And we know that that's reality varies also a lot from a CS team to another. Some CS teams have the luxury of having a dedicated ops person or a dedicated, sometimes even analyst team. Others don't have that luxury. Also, some CSMs happen to just be data proficient, and others not so much the case, more focused on the client relationship side. So that is just a reality that CS leaders will have to navigate. And turns out that client executive reporting is, again, as mentioned, one of the biggest time suck, but it's also critical in driving NRR. And in fact, it simply shows up in the stats. So if you look at the QBRs, there is what we call the QBR paradox, where they're both critical to renewals, which again shows up in the stats. QBR accounts that receive a QBR are twice more likely to renew than those who don't. Teams who often do QBRs have, in general, 24% higher retention, 18% higher NRR. But at the same time, they're a nightmare to scale. And in fact, it remains a major bottleneck for CS teams. Now, CSMs are not to blame, obviously, because what it takes to build a QBR is anywhere from 4 to 8 hours per QBR between the manual data pool. And we'll take a look at on the next slide that what are these tasks that are involved when building a QBR. But what it looks like is, one, checking your data sources, whether that's the BI tool, your CRM, Salesforce, Tableau, Power BI, or Looker, taking your data and manually exporting that into a spreadsheet to build and format these charts, only to then copy and paste them into slides, do some manual Q&A and check-in. Obviously, if you're building this process across 10, 20, sometimes 100 of clients, to finally only deliver it to stakeholders. So this long chain of fragile manual steps is essentially what is required to build a successful QBRs. And what it leads to is, one, slower decisions, two, lower trust in numbers, and then lastly, huge talent wasted on this process, which ultimately can lead to talent churn. And what it also leads to in terms of reality for most companies is dedicating this process only to their top 10% of the accounts, meaning that the rest is left without a proper QBR cadence.
Yeah. I mean, you think about the CSMs, like a scale CSM that has 100 customers, doing 100 QBRs is just not feasible. And then for those that have maybe 20 to 30, you still want them focused on the forward strategy and not spending as much time as you're saying here. I mean, even just looking at this, it's all of that time and not enough then focus on the go forward, which is what the customer really wants to see in that QBR. So yes, I mean, I'm sure this resonates for many people on the call as well, that this is just, it has historically taken just too much time to get to a really meaningful output.
Absolutely. And again, to your point, Jen, it is completely normal. If you're spending 80% of your time on QBR prep and compilation, you're only spending 20% of your time on insights generation, on the so what, and what it also means for your customer. Absolutely. And so, how did teams in the past attempt to solve this? Well, the first solve or the first attempt was building dashboards. So you hear sometimes, especially from product teams, hey, when discussing with CS teams, hey, why do you have to build these presentations? Why don't we just create and embed inside our product this amazing dashboard that will show our users where they how is their usage pacing, where they stand in terms of adoption. So they build these beautiful interactive dashboards, but guess what? The customer never looks at them. So when looking at the logs and the analytics for the dashboard, what they see is only CSMs have been looking at them to the best. Some client data analyst might have logged, but that's it. None of the key decision makers have actually looked at it. And these are the people who are going to be deciding the renewals. So dashboards are essentially where numbers live, but it's not where the renewals get to be decided.
Exactly. And it's the point that you make about what dashboards are saying, but what this other story, right? There's the different parts of the story that are being told that's interesting. So I know that individuals on my team have also kind of struggled with that, how to get to the phrase that you used earlier resonated with me so much, the so what. What is this actually telling? What data points do we actually need to be looking at in order to drive home that meaningful conversation that's going to get you one step closer to a renewal, to an expansion, to the customer feeling like they've gotten the ROI out of the platform that they need?
Absolutely. That's a great point.
Yeah.
And the other, attempt that we've seen some teams do, it turn into cloud code, right? Like that's somehow what everyone is supposed to do nowadays. Just throw your code on any problem and aim to fix it. Well, there are also multiple reasons why that doesn't work. So first, yes, AI might be able to generate a deck, but scaled client reporting is a way more complex problem. And in fact, you can paste your data into Claude and maybe tell it what you want, but there is no link to your data systems. Every QBR means another manual export and paste, and you might be able to get something that works at 40%, but you still have to do the remaining 60% yourself. The second point is there's a difference between doing it once and then doing it at scale for your hundreds, thousands, 10,000 of customers. And reality is that often breaks past one customer, you get different results. AI or LLMs, rather, by nature, are probabilistic. So you can throw your data in it, but there is no control over the output because by nature, again, it's probabilistic. And when it comes to client reporting or reporting in general, teams cannot take the risk of having the wrong number communicated to customers or communicated internally to execs. So the governance of it is extremely important. And it's not generally on brand. And also in order to get to a decent results, there's so much iterations that are involved that the cost per deck is simply don't make sense. And the economics are not there. You hit your rate limits after a couple of iterations. And so let alone building that for thousands of customers. So again, Gen AI is a great interface, but client reporting needs a true infrastructure.
Yeah. And I want to pause really quickly. We got a really interesting, good question from Laura. And I want to get our thoughts on this because it's very timely to this topic, but also just in general. And beyond the hours lost, so we've talked a lot about the inefficiency of it. What's the real hidden cost that we think? Is it the stale data? Is it copy paste, decks that never actually land? And with knowing that, how would we advise, or what piece of advice would we give a CS leader who wants to automate but doesn't quite know where to start?
Yeah, that's a great question, Laura. And so the way we see it is the hidden cost is more than the lost hours. It's more so all the accounts and customers that never receive a QBR or that don't receive it in a consistent manner. So that's number one. So it's revenue loss, it's renewals loss because teams didn't have enough bandwidth to cover these accounts properly. And for us, really, that's the number one cost to this process. The second one is around so being better thought partners to the customers, and that obviously comes through frequent touch points, but it also comes through being a thought partner and being a trusted advisor to these accounts. And QBRs are an excellent way to show them the platform value, but also build that relationship on an ongoing basis. And then lastly is the notion of governance, where if you look at the way CSMs today tend to build their decks, there is no consistent story, and each CSM tend to do their own thing sort of separately. So a big challenge for CS leaders is how can we templatize this process while obviously allowing CSMs to account for each account's own specificities and each customer's own case, but yet still have that centralized voice and that common template that is used across the CS teams. So again, the governance aspect is also something where CS leaders sort of lose the control, lose the visibility, and are not able to enforce without a proper centralized system.
Yeah, that's a great points. Laura, really quickly for me, so I want to be mindful of time, but I think behind the hours lost, I've always thought that it's the deck that doesn't land because there's too much time spent on the retroactive. All of the things that the data points that from a usage, past things like that. So what Nabil and I were saying earlier, less time on the insights and the go forward strategy because CSMs are just buried in the process of building out the perfect slide with the right data points. So, that's something that I've really tried to move my team away from and just spend less time on that, more on the go forward. And when you would automate, try to get, as he said, like a shorter template. And things like that so that you can start to automate some of those smaller admin tasks. Just start at the base level and then move up from there. That's always the key. And just don't let perfect be the enemy of good. Try it, doesn't work, keep going. So that's my biggest takeaway as a leader. So I know we have about 5 or so minutes left, Nabil. So I want us to keep going and get to some of those points. But if there are any other questions, keep them coming and we'll get you guys responses. But let's continue on with some of the other content.
Yeah, absolutely. And there is actually a great question from Rachel that I will be addressing as we go through this.
Great.
What we believe is makes up a great client reporting at scale infrastructure is something that can survive the 100,000, 10,000 of QBRs test. And what this requires is one, live data integrations so that teams don't have to be pulling data, pasting it in a platform. Two, scalability. So something that can run again at scale. Something that is on brand, where it respects what your marketing guidelines are and what the templates that your marketing teams are going to be providing, where you have governance and auditing, so being able to trace back the numbers and be able to manage permissions, version history, so all the great things that large organizations require, being able to distribute at scale, so not only producing, but also communicating with your customers. And then lastly, being able to do that in a economically viable way. And Rachel had this great question interested in seeing what are the costs of building a QBR via AI or cloud versus the CSM salary. It's actually a great question, Rachel, and really a hot topic right now in LLMs in general, where first we made the shortcut of AI being LLMs. Two, we started throwing LLMs on any problem simply because it turns out that one of the core use cases of LLMs beyond content generation, it also happens to be code. So, throwing code in on any problem and then, expecting the LLMs to come to a result. Well, guess what? First, the code generation generally by LLMs is of lower value of a senior software engineer. A software engineer would architect things in a very efficient way, while LLMs by nature just run massive amount of lines. So the results of that is massive costs to generate, an output that a human would generate in an extremely more efficient way. And you see that happening across many areas, whether it's doing outbound for the new business side or on the CS side, generating QBRs. That's really great question, Rachel.
Yeah.
On the next slide, so we think that the future of client executive reporting is agentic, and we think that agents have the potential to change how teams operate, with Customer 360 platform, being able to surface any risks and health of accounts, but also conversational AI that teams are leveraging in multiple places. And where Rollstack sits in is that true last mile. So essentially automating that executive reporting in the formats that leaders and execs are used to the most. So slides, docs, and emails where they truly live in. This is where we sit in sort of the data stack. We connect the different data sources directly to content platforms like slide, docs, emails, and extend the automation capabilities of the modern data stack a step further into these content platforms. Some of the sharing with you here, some of the customers that we proudly serve and for which we enable these data-driven reporting at scale, ranging from SMBs to large enterprises. And what allows that to happen is the real ROI and the real outcomes. So we obviously, as CSMs, you care about this this rationale and this messaging a lot. So what outcomes are we driving? That's also what we're focused on as a company. And there is no point in deploying any technology if it's not really driving measurable and tangible results. So the stats that we're seeing across the board is we're able to cut down their data reporting workflows by a minimum of 80%. And that is across client presentations for CSMs, but also other teams such as finance. It happens that finance teams tend to follow a very similar process as CSMs, and you might think that they're more advanced or they're more automated. That's clearly not the case. If you look at BizOps, RevOps, they also tend to build a lot of reporting. And the advantage of the RoleStack's platform is it's team agnostic, which also makes it easier for CSMs to get buy-in from the rest of the organization, especially the CFO org that happens to be a strong champion of the platform. I'll quickly skim through some of the things that are some of the use cases that we've seen across the board. I love this one from Sony Music. They have a lean team of analysts that was generating or was supposed to generate report for more than 10,000 artists. These are their customers for whom they build a ton of reporting. Wow, what a cool use case. So they essentially share with them insights and results of their sales on different platforms, Spotify, YouTube, etc. And that's something that we've been able to do with the platform. The other examples are from SoFi. This is a finance team being able to cut down their quarter to close process. And then lastly, Equality Health. This is a great use case we showcased at the Gainsight Pulse conference a couple of weeks ago, where they were able to also scale value-based care reporting with a relatively lean team of a couple of analysts across more than 800 practices. I will skip this slide, but our infrastructure is best in class. We have all the things that your security team and IT team is going to love. And then lastly, I wanted to pause here and Jen, see if you have any final thoughts before we open it up to the audience for questions.
No, I think this has been great. I mean, as we said in the beginning, I mean, I feel like you and I could talk about this for hours because of where the landscape is going. And I, been watching the chat and really good conversations. I mean, it's very apparent that there is so much more that can be done here to help just the life of a CSM in terms of the data that's being captured, how that's being formulated back into meaningful deliverables that matter to the executives. Even I saw a comment from Sarah in terms of how are CSMs logging their interactions? And I mean, that's definitely something that my team thinks about. Are there inputs that are being lost? And how are you automating the capture of all of those from notes from Gong recordings, Gong calls, keywords, emails, all of the Slack, all of these different places where we have interactions from customers that could be meaningful in terms of delivery back. There's a lot of different data points that we have to think about. And so finding ways to automate that is just it's a very timely topic, and I've appreciated that. I don't see any other questions from the audience at this time. Great topics, though. I mean, I've written down some notes of things that we could do for future. There's just so much content here. So, Nabil, thank you so much for sharing your perspective. It's been such a good conversation, and look forward to seeing more around how this continues to evolve. So thank you everyone for joining us today. Hope that you learned some things, had great insight from one another, and look forward to the next time.
Thank you, Jen, and thank you all for joining. Pleasure doing this with you all.